Okay, so we are doing the magazine cover assignment. You start by making a new document. You want that document to be 8.5 by 11 and name it your name _ magazine. Say okay. Okay. Then in the blog, you will see that I have given you a list of magazines to choose from. So you want to choose from one of these magazines in the list. And what you're looking for is something that has a lot of wording on it because we're practicing type alignment in this assignment. So this is a really good example of a magazine with a lot of words on it. This food and wine one is much less challenging. This is for somebody who's feeling really behind and having a hard time keeping up with assignments. You could choose something like this. This food and wine one has a little bit more of a challenge to it because it's got a little bit more wording, but it's not nearly as challenging as this Rolling Stone. If you're somebody who's always finishing ahead of time and is interested in graphic design and wants to know more about skills you would need to do this actual work for pay, then you should choose something like this. Challenge yourself. I put this one in by accident. I've got to take this one out. And then there's also the Vanity Fair example. Again, it has a lot of wording in there. So you want to choose something with a lot of words to it. When you're finding the photograph for the assignment, you want to choose something that has a large file size. So remember that when you're at that point. Once you have found your magazine, so actually if I go back to my browser, I'll just show you how I would search for that. I would do something like Rolling Stone magazine cover.
Camtasia will export it.
And then click on the images.
Then give you a button to view it.
And find one that you want to use.
By double-clicking.
If you click right here,
it might take a few minutes to export. So
on the resolution size, you'll find whatever the largest one is that's available on the internet.
However,
and
Camtasia
take
also
from there.
provides
So I'm going to take
a fully featured editor to help you improve your screencasts.
Click here.
Let's go through some of the basics of editing.
Image
that will
by
help
itself.
you speed up your recording
Right-click
zoom
and
into parts
save
that are
image
most
as,
important.
and save it into your Google Drive.
From recording or any media in a project.
Into your graphic design folder, into a new folder that you've
Let's start
called
with
magazine.
trimming the edges of media, since that's simplest.
Okay.
On the timeline,
so for this example,
clips and do most of the editing in
am
your video.
using
just mouse over the edge of a
a
clip.
Popular
Notice how the
Mechanics
cursor changes
magazine.
to an arrow. And then
so
click
here
and drag.
was the magazine cover.
You can
This
also
is
use
a
this
really
technique
good,
to resize the length of
challenging
the
one.
media,
It's got a
including
lot of
annotations.
type inside shapes.
Your turn.
It's got
Hit
a
pause and
selection
use
made of
trim
a
to
robot
remove
that's
this
coming
cough from the
over
recording.
the headline. So this would be a
Click
really
play
good
when
one
you're
for
ready
somebody
to
who
continue.
wants some challenge to be able
If you've
to do.
trimmed that cough out, you'll notice
So
it
the
left a
first
blank
thing
spot
that
in the
you
video.
do
So I'll
is
show you
place
another way to
the
remove a
magazine
segment of
cover
media
in.
that closes
So
the gap.
File.
Just place your cursor right before the part you want to remove, hold the Shift key, then click and drag to make a selection.
Place.
You can also drag up or
I'm gonna
down
make a new
to
layer.
include clips on multiple
So I've got
tracks. After you
Here,
let
I'll
go,
start this from
you can
the
also
actual
adjust the
new one.
edges of
It'll
the
be easier.
selection.
File, place.
Then, right-click and choose Ripple Delete
And
Range.
then
to have
mine
everything to the right on those
that I
tracks,
just found
shift in to fill the
is
gap.
in my Google
Click pause
Drive
and try it for yourself.
inside my
By
graphic design
removing,
folder inside magazine.
The
And there's the
two
Popular
ums
Mechanic. Place it
this
in,
section.
hold your Shift
Click
key,
play again, and you've done
and make this as large as
You
it
can find more
can to
tutorials
fit
about
on the
working
8.5
and
by
editing
11
on the
document.
timeline by right-clicking in an
And
empty
center
spot
it in there.
and choosing Timeline Tutorials.
Then lock
Now,
that
earlier,
layer.
I mentioned that you could
by
add
holding
your
your little
recordings,
lockbox
as well as
here.
audio and images.
Then
to
you're
your
going to make a
screencast.
new layer.
You can do this by
Not
going
a
to the media
duplicate
bin
layer, but a
and
new
dragging
layer
the
just by
item
clicking
to
this
the
button
canvas,
here.
which is
I
this
have a new
big
layer
section
now,
here
and I'm going to
where
call
you're
this
previewing
layer
this Getting Started
my
project.
grid.
Or you can drag it to the timeline.
A grid
this
is
case,
a series
drag
of
the
columns
audio
and
grid
rows
clip
that
to the
designers
timeline
use to
here.
place in this
Pause
information.
the video until you've
So
done it.
in my grid layer,
Finally, Let me
I'm
show you
going
how
to
make
take my
details like
rectangle
text
tool,
more crisp and legible.
make sure
by
that
using
my
the zoom
fill
animation.
is none,
Let's take this
and my
area for
stroke is
If I'm talking
something
about it in my
bright that I
screencast,
can
I should
see
zoom in
on
there
top
so
of
the
my
viewers can read the
magazine.
text.
And I'm
so
going to draw
everything
a
else
rectangle
currently shown
out
doesn't
over my
distract them
magazine
from what's important.
cover.
To add a
covering the
zoom
whole
animation,
thing.
go to the Animations tab.
Then I'm going to
and
go
drag
to
the
Object,
Zoom In animation
Path,
to the recording you want to zoom in
Split
on.
into Grid,
It will be represented by an
and I'm
arrow
going
on the media
to
clip.
look at,
Then, in
I
the canvas,
click on a
drag
preview
your
here,
video
and I'm
until
going to
the
look at,
correct
okay,
area is
how many
shown.
rows do I need?
You can also change when the animation
Here's what it looks
starts
like
or
with
ends,
2 rows,
and how long it lasts
3 rows,
by dragging
4
the
rows,
middle
and you'll
or
start
the
to
dots
see
at each end of the arrow.
when you
Pause
put in
now
these
and
grids
zoom in on this part
where
of
the
screen.
designer was designing to. So
click
once I
play
got to 6, I started
Excellent.
to see,
Now,
oh, this
pause
is
and drag
lining
the
up.
zoom out animation
This-
to some place
These
later in
rows
the
are
clip
lining
to
up
see
with
what that
Popular
does.
Mechanics here. Trust is ending right about here.
Notice how it scaled the video to fit everything in the
Hand
canvas?
backs is ending
That's
right
great
about
for
here. So
giving
this
viewers
seems to
a
be
larger
fitting
context.
into a grid. You can see how
All
this
right.
is fitting
After you
in
practice
this
the basics,
area.
be
So
sure to check
I
out
know
the
that 6
tutorial
is
viewer
going to work
to
for
learn
my
even
rows.
more.
Now let's try again
Go to
with
the help menu
columns.
and choose
I keep
Tutorial
pressing
Viewer.
the columns
Take a bit
until
of
I
time to
see
explore the different
that
videos,
here it looks
articles,
to be
and the
4.
Camtasia course.
You see how
These will be invaluable
Russian
in helping you create
dam
videos that
disaster is
communicate
fitting right
and
into
teach.
the edge of this row.
Now try creating your own project.
Can is fitting in right
start,
here.
go here to the
Robots
File
is
menu
fitting
and
in about
choose
the end of
New
here.
Project.
So you're starting to see
Thanks,
how
and happy screencasting.
things were being placed into a grid that a designer made very similar to this. Each magazine's going to have a different grid based on how much wording is in there. So you'll have to play around with your number of rows and columns. So I'll say OK to that. And then in my layers, I want to also lock my grid. So those 2 layers are locked, and I'm making a new layer. And this is going to be called My Version. And I'll design in this version. And I will put it in between my 2 layers. Okay, now to do this assignment, one of the first things you're going to do is look for your photograph. So I'm going to be looking for a photograph of a robot. I'm not going to do it in this sample, but you would look for the robot first. If you needed to, in this example, I would have to select the robot out of its background in Photoshop and save it as a PNG, because a PNG has transparency. So when I place it into Illustrator, it will go right over the title. Then the next thing I need to do is find fonts that look like these fonts. So I'm going to start with Popular Mechanics. I don't know what font that is yet, so I can go to DaFont. And I type in right here the word Popular Mechanic. Is it? Just so that I can get a sample of what that's going to look like. And I know that it was a serif font. Serif means it has these little decorative lines at the end of each letter. A sans serif font has no decorative lines at the end of the letters. Okay, so you're going to look in this area under Basic, either sans serif or serif, to find most of your fonts. And then when I was looking, I saw this one right away, and I said, oh, that looks just like the magazine. So I downloaded it, and then you load it into Illustrator by double-clicking. I guess I could demonstrate that. Download, and then it's going to be down here. Click on it, and then double-click here, and say Install Font. Mine's already there. So it's going to give me something saying you have a duplicate font. So I'm not going to need to install it, but that is how you would install a font. So then back to Illustrator. You need to do these things in separate text boxes. The more separate text boxes you have, the more that you can change things around. So you have to draw out first with your type tool a text box, and then type your word. This word is Popular. My shift, if I hold shift, command, and greater than, I can make my type larger or smaller. Right now I'm going to change the font. It was called Chunk 5. So I've changed this here. Oops, it went to chalkboard. Chunk 5. And then I can take my eyedropper tool and pick the color. And then I can do my shift command, greater than sign, to keep lining this up till I feel like it's getting close to the same size. Then I can take my arrow keys and kind of adjust it. So if I turn the eyeball off, then there's what I have, and it looks really close to the original magazine. I can turn my eye off here and you can see the difference. Okay, now in this assignment, you're going to have to pay close attention to something called the character palette. So you'll go to Window, Type, Character. And this is where you can change things like the space between lines of type. So that means between best and gadgets, how much space is there? That you can change right here. Your size of your type, you can change right here. And how much space there is between your letters of type, you change right here. So if I show you, I have this clicked. See how when I do this, my letters on popular are moving further apart from each other. So you use this key to line your stuff up just like the magazine. Then we have paragraph. This is where you choose if you want to align to left, center, or right alignment. Okay? So those are the basic things that you'll need in order to do this assignment.